awesome. So, I'm Keshava, and I'm currently a senior, and I'm writing the story. I'm really excited to hear from you guys and see what you guys have to say. So it'd be great if everyone could introduce themselves, starting with I only knew Pranav was gonna come here today because I got that in the email. I didn't know he had group mates, so it'd be great if everyone could introduce themselves.
Yeah, so I'm Pranav, and I'm like one of the engineers, and I also do most of the outreach for our group. And so yeah, I'm the one you've been communicating with, but this whole project has been like a team effort. So
Yeah. So I'm Yanray. You can just call me Ray. I'm the lead programmer for this group. I'm also a junior, like Pranav. And I've been sort of like polishing up like some of our essays so far for the competition. So
Yeah, I'm Rohit. I'm also a junior, and I'm one of the mechanical and design members on it.
Awesome. And is your mentor Mr. York over here?
that is correct.
Yes.
Hi, it'd be great if you could introduce yourself as well.
Sure. I'm William York. I am their AP Physics 2 teacher.
That's awesome. Okay. So I think we can get started. So what inspired you to get involved in this competition and what drew you to doing a project in STEM specifically in this area?
Yeah, so I mean, I think we'll talk about why we were interested in tackling this issue specifically in a moment. But pretty much, all of us have some sort of background in engineering and specifically in robotics, whether that's on the mechanical or the programming side. And so, once we recognized this issue was like so pressing in our community, we just really, we really wanted to do something about it, right? We had skills in engineering. We wanted to apply those to actually like solve a real issue. And so the competition is something that kind of came along once we had already started. But the idea for the project came way before we even thought about applying to the competition. And really, the main focus behind it was that we just wanted to use the skills that we've gotten in engineering over the last 2 3 years and apply that to like solve an actual issue and have some sort of actual impact in our community rather than just doing other competitions with it.
yeah.
That's amazing.
So like, oh yeah, no, go ahead.
No, go ahead, please.
Oh, so I was just gonna share a little personal anecdote. So like obviously Pranav over here has been walking to and from school like pretty much for his entire like sort of high school journey. This year I actually started getting like some scheduling conflicts with my siblings. So I started walking to and from school and I really like developed a sort of newfound sense of respect for all the people who walk to and from school during the winters because it's freezing cold. The ground is like super slippery. And it just so happened that this year, I sort of moved away from Vex Robotics for this. And I'm really excited because I've done competitive programming and programming for robotics for like many years. And I'm really excited to sort of work with these amazing group members and sort of put those STEM skills to use in creating a positive impact for our community. So.
That's amazing. Before we dive into specifics, it'd be great if you could introduce like the overall topic of your project and maybe just give like a bird's eye view of what you guys submitted. Or yeah.
Yeah, so I think pretty much the issue we're trying to address is the icy sidewalks that developed during the winter because as Ray mentioned, we've been walking to school like every day for the past few years. And so what we've noticed is that like in the winters, even though the city does do things to clear the roads, like they have plows, they put down road salt, there's very little done on the sidewalks. And like so for example, when I was in ninth grade, so 2 years ago, there was a really big snowstorm here. And school was shut for a few days, but it reopened pretty quickly. And so, we were forced to walk to school even when the sidewalks were still really icy and unsafe. And so I remember one specific morning in January, like I walk out of my house and immediately I see three people in a row slip and fall right in front of my driveway. And I'm like, oh, those guys are probably just being careless, right? So I walk out too, and then the moment I step past my driveway, I slip and fall too. And describing it like that, it seems kind of humorous, but it's actually a really big danger, right? Like if you fall at a certain angle, you could break a bone, you could get like irreparable like damage to your head. Like it can be really, really dangerous depending on the situation. And so, that was the first time I realized like the city's not doing much about this so far, and it's a really big problem. We have to do something about it.
Yeah, and especially for like vulnerable groups such as like elderly people, like for example near like we have some like elderly teachers here, but also near like places like senior centers or like places like hospitals. You know, especially in the winters, those places, those people might not be able to, you know, like Pranav said, just be have that sort of youthful energy and just slip and fall and then get right back up. So we really want to just sort of not just for our local school, but once we're finished sort of prototyping and testing this, we want to expand that sort of our vision to like the wider local community and maybe even further. We'll just see where it takes them.
I think it's important to recognize the real magnitude of the issue because there's like over 2.7 million students like that walk to school during these winter seasons, and about a dozen near our area fall each season. So it's quite a large issue, and I believe we can solve it potentially.
Awesome. So that's like the overarching challenge. But I actually did not get a chance anywhere in any of the emails to see what was like the project you guys came up with and what was like the solution you had, theoretical or actual practically built prototype that you used to solve this problem. It'd be great if you could expand upon that.
Yeah, of course. Pranav, you want me to start?
Mhm.
Okay, so the overall idea is we're trying to make an autonomous snow plowing robot that also melts ice simultaneously. So on the mechanical end, we are having a module, a drive base that basically is strong enough and can would take like can be strong during winters. And on the to push the snow, we have like a plow on a pivot so that we can have multiple angles and can fit through tight spaces. And finally, we have like an heated insulated tank in the back with calcium carbonate to melt the ice. And Pranav can go into more detail.
Yeah, so just to expand on that a little bit, pretty much all of our solutions are kind of taking something that's already there and trying to just make it a little bit more effective. So like, for example, Rohit mentioned with our plow, rather than just having a traditional plow that just literally just pushes the snow out of the way, as he said, we also have this linkage that allows it to kind of rotate and like turn off to the side. So that lets us kind of push snow aside as we're plowing it, and it lets us basically clear the sidewalks much more quickly. And on the back, using calcium carbonate, which we're actually going to have a solution with the calcium carbonate dissolved in heated water. That's just a lot more effective than normal road salt, and it's also just a little bit more environmentally friendly since a lot of the drains in our area like drain into like Puget Sound and whatnot. So it's just a bit more environmentally conscious. And one more thing that was kind of important to us throughout the entire design is just having it as affordable as possible, because as Ray mentioned, our hope is to just expand this as much as possible, using it in multiple schools, senior centers, even hospitals. And so we just want to make sure that it's really simple and easy to produce, and that cost isn't a barrier. So we've just been really careful about using low cost parts, trying to like improvise wherever we can and just use simpler solutions. And so it's let us bring the cost of the entire device to around $1,000, which is like compared to arguably less effective, but somewhat similar technology currently available on the market, it's like 80% cheaper.
Yeah. And like Pranav said, our three focuses are effectiveness and also feasibility, because obviously when you have an like autonomous robot going around your neighborhood, like just by itself, a relatively large sort of device, you have to make sure it complies with like state regulations. You have to make sure you get permission to use it. So feasibility and then also affordability. So those three things we've really tried to like clamp down hard on. From the programming end, my end, we really want to like stress the autonomous portion of it, because obviously, if you have like the time, or if you can get people to agree to it, you could just hire like two people and then they could go out at 3 a.m. in the morning and shovel snow from the sidewalks, But like that's just not like, we don't want to do that. Like if you asked us to wake up at that early and then like clear the sidewalks, we don't want to do that. So we're working on using a real-time clock, a GPS, and like various sensors such as a gyroscopic sensor, an ultrasonic sensor for obstacle detection, just so that we can program a route and a routine deployment schedule for the robot so that it could do everything by itself and need minimal human intervention. We think that'll make the entire process streamlined and also allow us to expand the scope of the entire project. So, yeah.
So it's essentially like, would it be kind of like a Roomba where there's pre-planned paths in which it's going to take, or is it basically learning new roads and going down them and then applying whichever the sidewalks, or like he doesn't have to even know the sidewalk, he just goes down the sidewalk. How is that, how exactly does it work on that end?
Yeah, so pretty much it's pretty much the first thing you said, where we're basically going to try to design an app that lets the user put in the route that it wants the robot to take. Pretty much as Ray mentioned, we're going to have like a GPS with it. And I think this is one of the coolest parts about the autonomous motion. Basically, what these GPS sensors can do is they like connect with local weather stations that have like publicly available tracking data. And so that lets us like track the position of the robot very accurately, like down to a centimeter, in real time, right? And so using that data, basically we'll have users just kind of put in the route that they want to use the robot to take. And the robot will be able to follow that path very accurately by just moving to the corresponding coordinates.
Awesome. So this is like a complex project. So has this already been built already, or is like the theory and basically the description of this whole bot is what you guys submitted to the competition?
Well, for the first stage, so the way the competition works is the Solve for Tomorrow contest is built in stages. And for the first stage, which is the one that we just did, all you need is an sort of like an activity guide where you're gonna lay out like precise, actionable steps that you're taking, as well as your sort of vision for the big project and various questions about like community impact and stuff. So that's the round we just did. And we advanced to the second round as state finalists. So as the second round, just by advancing, you do win $2,500 worth of Samsung products for your school, which is pretty nice. But then also, this round it's less vague and general, and it's more about specific stuff. For example, what have you done? And what actionable steps is like the key word here. But again, there's nothing about like for example, the prototype. For that, we are planning on having a working prototype that we can like actively test by the end of March and the beginning of April. So
Yeah, because I mean, pretty much what we've our progress up until now is we've kind of we did all this research first of all just to figure out how to develop like more effective solutions, such as with the plow and the calcium chloride and all of that. So we did all that research, figured out what parts we want to use, and we've started basically like assembling the drive base and also working with the various sensors we want to use and just testing them to see like how we get data from them and how we're going to use that to control the robot and avoid obstacles, follow paths, all of that. And so as Ray said, by like kind of end of March or just like over the next few months, our goal is to develop the rest of the systems as well, like the plow and the calcium chloride tank. And once we develop those independently, we hope to just integrate everything after that and hopefully start testing it, for example, around our school by like April or so.
Yeah, we've
That's
also
amazing. Go ahead. Sorry.
also done prototyping via like online softwares, such as we've done a lot of CADing through or like 3D modeling through Onshape. And we've also done a lot of testing for our circuit diagrams, if you guys want to talk more about that as well.
yeah, so about the circuit diagrams, like at the start, when we were still like pretty vague about like the whole idea, Pranav actually over here, you sent me a circuit diagram on a piece of paper, and I was like, how do I say that? I was quite frankly shocked at like, I mean, it had all the components down, but it was like not going back to that last term, not actionable. Like it would be hard to like make a working like model based off of what that had. So over time, since we're all like, this is our first time ever trying something like this, we've all sort of grown together and gotten more experience. And now we have like a lot better of a actionable circuit diagram on a professional circuit diagram software. I think we're using Fritzing right now. And we've sort of found like actual parts, we've connected everything, and that way we can actually, for example, once we get all the necessary parts, we can connect the sensors on there and we can actually do testing, see what works, what doesn't work, easily edit it. That's sort of what the circuit diagrams have been like.
It's awesome. So you're explaining a lot of complex parts which has a lot of interplay. So, Mr. York, you should have been sitting quiet, so I want to ask you some questions. How have you been able to basically guide your three students in a way that there's obviously going to be a lot of challenges that they encountered? How do you guide them through these challenges and obstacles so that they're able to come victorious on the other side and continue with the rest of the project?
Would you guys mind thank you. Well, there's a couple things that they should be able to know how to like should be able to do already as a part of our class, which is kind of cool. They're directly applying the things that they're learning in our class, AP Physics too. Um, and then there's some other things that maybe I have some experience with, a little bit of robotics, but I'd say most of it is stuff that they have figured out on their own. I'm I'm just here. I'm not going out and researching these things on my own time. Um, and they've they've brought a lot of really, really good ideas to the table, and uh, they've done all the work on their own. So, um, yes, I've advised a little bit, but that's all I've done. I've just given like little pieces of advice that they've asked for, and all the effort has been them. So I'm
Mhm.
really quite impressed and curious to see uh, what they produce.
That's amazing. So, what role do you think competitions like this helps or are play in helping students understand like real world STEM applications?
This is a good question. This is awesome because um, it's like you can spend years in a classroom and learn a lot of really interesting topics on paper and have no idea how to apply it and no idea how to build a circuit after doing years of like electrical engineering in high school or college. Um, at least for most people, the way you learn it is by doing it. And um, these guys are doing it. So competitions like this get students who are interested in a topic like real world experience. You don't really know circuitry until you've had to call a parts company or go onto their online catalog and actually buy the resistors, capacitors, transistors, chips, everything that you actually need to build your final product. So competitions like this are amazing. If they can get uh, if they can put kids in touch with the motivation and the resources to do interesting projects, then they're doing just as much as, well, I was going to say just as much as their teachers, but it's a huge supplement to their education. I think it's great.
That's awesome. So, I've actually talked to for a different competition to other teachers, and they've given me different responses. And how is this helping basically your students and seeing them progress? Basically, has it ever affected how you teach think physics too? Is it E&M? Am I right? Has how has that affected your teaching in class, if it has at all?
Um, uh, it's definitely affected my teaching a little bit. These guys aren't my first students ever to be pursuing a really interesting side project that has applied the content that we've learned in our class. And to me, it makes everything I'm teaching so much more real because most of my students are going to be memorizing the content and eventually they will forget it because they have other things to study for. Um, when you apply it, like I said earlier, it becomes real. And these guys are much less likely to um, put this new knowledge aside because they've personally invested in it. And I know now uh, when we talk about circuits in class or magnetism or any of the other topics that we're going to be doing this year, um, these guys have something to apply it to. It's like uh, everything that I everything that I teach them is like a new screwdriver in a tool belt that they can use to pursue their project. It's cool. It makes teaching easier. They have intrinsic motivation now.
It's amazing. So my other question, I think you kind of just answered it, was were there times where they're ever like sort of kind of roadblocked? I think I asked this kind of earlier, but then you gave them any sort of motivation or advice. Can you give me a specific time you did this so that they were able to progress forward?
Sure. I have not had to motivate them at all.
Okay,
They
that's
are
awesome.
hyper motivated to do this on their own. Um, there have been a couple times where they've been curious about how they'd actually uh, build, like put something together. What types of chips would you use? What types of processors? What type of computerized system would you use? And been able to talk about, okay, uh, our options might be Arduinos, Raspberry Pis, and a handful of other kind of more custom solutions. Um, and definitely when it comes to like having a semi-autonomous GPS guided robot, there's a lot of really there's a lot of really big engineering hurdles, but there's also a whole community of people who have been doing that same thing for different purposes. Um, and I just saw Rohit nod a little bit because I basically have tried to get uh, give them a couple resources related to that. So what have I done? Not much, but I have a couple little I have a couple little connections and experiences of my own that are related that I can kind of help them make.
That's awesome. So turning it back to you three, how does it feel to basically be trying to address real world problems in such a way? And did you ever expect to do this in this kind of competition?
Yeah, it feels like a culmination of all the work we've done, really. Like me personally, I've been in the first robotics program for over 7 years now. And through that, of course, I've been able to get better at my robotic skills, get better technically, and compete. But really being able to help my community out while making something that I can call completely my own is just a great way to, like, as an engineer and as a student, it's just an amazing feeling to be able to help people while being able to learn and actually getting experience. So overall, I would say like this is one of my most like the key highlights of my life so far because it really is just delightful to see a product come to life and being able to help our community.
Yeah, I agree. Like, similar to Rohit, I've been competing in Vex robotics for the last 4 years. And this year I decided to stop doing that to instead, be able to work a lot more on this project. And at first, like, I was really nervous about making that decision because it's, competing in robotics was a very big part of my life for the last 4 years. But like so far, I have zero regrets because I think I've learned so much more from what we're doing. It's a far more like real application. Like yes, solving a real issue, but also just like using far more like real parts, doing a ton more research, and like a lot more similar to actually developing a product as you would in like an actual company, right? And so I think it's just been so much more rewarding, and I've not regretted my decision even once.
Yeah, my story is kind of similar to Pranav's. I've also done Vex Robotics for 4 years, two in Vex IQ and then two in VRC. And it's like sort of been like one of like sort of my main like extracurriculars for like the past 2 years, especially in high school when sort of the entire robotics environment has become like a lot more competitive. So last year our team actually did like really well in the Vex Robotics competition. So then this year making that decision to sort of step away from sort of the like comfortable territory of what I do know, like, oh, I've done this before, I know I'm good at this, I know I can do this, to into this sort of new venture where we get to sort of make a more real world impact and sort of make that difference in our community. I mean, for me, it's been for sure a bit of a like a sort of a nervous experience for the first time, there's a lot of new territory to cover. But also like again, I have said it once, I can't say it again. These guys are awesome, sort of like working with them and then also sort of navigating this new like uh, territory for growth. I think it's been a great decision on my end. I don't regret a single thing. Yeah.
I think the main thing is like from going through robotics programs that are literally built for students to doing something completely on our own. It's like taking the training wheels off of a bicycle. Now we can choose our own routes.
Great analogy. I love it. So what like one of the closing questions I had is what is me I don't want to say challenges because I said it again. Give me a moment which is most memorable to you, whether it be a challenge, a nervous point in the time, or maybe a time where you guys had a lot of fun, like late night collaboration, talking on phone call about the project, or you're on PCB way. I don't know if you guys use that and the parts are just not coming out the way you wanted. Like, give me a memorable moment or something that really stood out to you so far in this journey.
Yeah, I think there's been a lot of moments like that, but one of the most memorable, in my opinion, is right as we were trying to submit our next stage of the application for the Samsung competition, like submitting our application to be selected as state winners. We just submitted that like a week or two ago.
I think last
And yeah, the night it was due, we were just, we had everything written out, but we just wanted to get on call one last time and make sure we were happy with everything. And there was just, a lot of new ideas and like small improvements we had. So it did get a bit stressful making quite a few changes at the last second, but it was also just, it was still a lot of fun. Like, no matter how stressful the like environment gets, like for example, submitting such an important competition, like with it due in just a few hours, like no matter how stressful it gets, it's always still just like super fun working with these guys. We've all known each other for super long and are like really comfortable with each other. So like, no matter what happens, we're always able to just joke about it. And that was like a really fun memory, just getting everything together in those last few hours.
Well, he talked about the fun stuff. I guess yeah, for sure. Like we're all sort of perfectionists. So whenever a sort of deadline, because we set one of the cool things about working on a project like this is like, for example, for Vex, you have these, the competition is gonna be here. The world championship is gonna be in this month. But for like sort of these projects, it's more there is no deadline. And that makes well, one challenge is definitely procrastination, right? Because you set your own deadlines. So we've had to sort of we've used Excel, we've used other sort of organizing programs to sort of set deadlines for ourselves. Say, okay, by this time we need to have this done, and by this time we need to have this done. That way we can actually make tangible progress along like sort of this project. And one of the things about doing that is that because like I would say we're all sort of perfectionists, as soon as like Pranav said, a deadline is coming up, we might have had something prepared for that like 2 weeks ago, but then as soon as that deadline is coming up, we're like, oh no, how can I make this better? This is all of a sudden it doesn't look so secure. So then but again, that's just a great team bonding experience at the end of the day, because again, we just come together, and then I think we've been happy with all of our products so far. Yeah. So I just think that was one of the challenges, but also it's one of the most rewarding parts about working on something like this.
Yeah, we've been seeing like the similar kind of trend happen like from initial design thinking. Like I remember me, Pranav, and Ray, like we've been thinking a lot about exactly how we want our robot to move and feasibility overall. And throughout like even starting like before last summer, we've been constantly thinking about it, talking about it. And yeah, it's been a great process.
Awesome.